I'm back, baby!
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the ever-evolving and never-ending Ready Set podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. All right, so we're going to do something that we haven't done in a long time, is do a video react, and that's going to be to this Asmongold reacting to Matt Walsh talking about tipping culture. And since this podcast started with basically talking about servers, look at it, Ready Set podcast number 1, servers, why you're being screwed. We're just going to react to this because I think this is kind of an interesting take on tipping culture. So let's get this video going here.
At a sit-down restaurant is still the standard, according to most etiquette experts in the U.S. After holding standard for years, though, tipping at full service.
How the fuck do you become an etiquette expert? Like, what are we talking about here? An etiquette expert? According to who? What?
I mean, okay, that's an interesting start, but yeah, let's keep going.
What is this?
Restaurants fell to 19.4% in the second quarter of 2023, according to online restaurant platform Toast's most recent restaurant trends report, notching the lowest average since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's the headline, is that the tipping is falling. People are tipping less. Tip fatigue.
Thank God.
Well, I mean, you have to ask yourself, like, why are people tipping less? Is it the service standards? Is it the economy? Because again, he said Q2 of 2023. So that's going to be April, May, and June of last year. So remember where the economy was back then. You know, it's about a year ago. We obviously know the economy has not been trending in a better direction, if you will. So it's kind of interesting to see how tips even a year ago were starting to, trend backwards, because I know now it's not that great.
God. Thank fucking God.
I'm telling you, Asmongold does not know this.
This has been going on for my whole life. Oh, you need to tip a lot. Oh, well, if you can't.
And he's already demonstrating that he doesn't even understand what the guy just said. He's talking now. He's just moving. I don't even know if he's moving the goalpost, but he's changing the nature of the argument, because Matt Walsh is saying restaurants are down about 20% in this quarter, and because of that, people are tipping less. And now he's celebrating that. Like, talk about being a little disconnected from the working class, right?
You can't afford to tip. You can't afford to go out. I am so sick of these entitled fucks and these upper middle class people that like looking down on the working class man trying to buy a fucking pizza for.
Okay, I'm gonna stop him right there. So no one, again, I shouldn't say no one. Maybe there are a few people in the upper middle class who thumb their nose at people that don't tip. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that exists. In all my many years of working in restaurants, knowing people that work in restaurants, managing restaurants, never in my world have I ever seen anyone bring up a problem where, like, that poor guy over there didn't tip the server, and I'm very, very offended, and that guy's a piece of shit, and he shouldn't be allowed back in here. Nobody's that concerned with other people. They're just not. Like, everyone's too consumed with their own selves to be worried about it. The only people who care about people who don't tip are the servers, the bussers, the people that receive the tips. Those are the people that care. People who are third parties to this don't give a shit. Here's a little secret too. I don't even think the restaurant cares. I don't even think the managers care. They just want the food to get served and then trying to get out of there and get home.
For his family and trying to shame him because he's not giving his extra $4 to some delivery driver. What the fuck are we doing? It's just so goddamn fucking annoying, man.
Now, again, I can look at the other side of the coin here. He's right. Like, you shouldn't have to tip to ensure proper service. But the thing is like, it's not as subjective as he's making it out to be, because, proper service is very subjective. But, it's also something that, like, if you give someone proper service, how do you put this? It's not like, proper service isn't like this Orioles baseball card. You know what I mean? Like, if I serve a table, it's not like there's a physical thing showing what that service I gave to you was. So if I take this, put it in my pocket, and walk out of here, hope to God I do not forget that this is in my pocket, that's theft. But because that card doesn't exist in the physical world like a service does, a service that you provide someone, there's no way to say they stole this from me.
I hate that. Brilliant working class? I'm not. but I'm also not upper middle class either. Fuck them, man.
Wait, what?
What do you mean? It's not. Those are the people that do it. If you go on Twitter
He's not
and
upper
you
middle
see
class?
the people
What?
that are making comments,
Isn't that house he in? Doesn't he own it? Isn't that his mom's house? Like, this is another thing I don't understand what rich people do. I mean, there's someone I know that has a person in their life that is extremely rich, and this person used to always downplay their richness. You know, like, what's a money market account? I remember asking. Oh, it's just an account that, whatever. You know, it's. I don't even remember what they said. This was so long ago, but I remember it being like it's an investment account that my dad set up for me, and sounds like rich people stuff if you ask me. And yeah, let's just go on the video.
and talking about, oh, who needs to tip, and it's so
That's right. Downplaying the richness. That's what I was saying. And that's what they would always do, is just downplay how rich they were. And it's just like, it's just a money market account. It's just another kind of checking account. Don't worry about it, you know. Only to find out years later this person's, you know, and their family, they're basically millionaires. And it was completely downplayed, and it's just kind of funny if you think about it. Well, not really, but anyway.
bad not to tip. Every single one of them is typing that shit from a fucking MacBook. They've always got money, or they're a waiter. And they're like, yeah, everybody needs to tip. Oh, I wonder why you think that.
Well, yeah, man. People got to pay their bills. Is that something you don't know anything about? You know, if no one's... Okay, let's talk about how tipping works really quickly, because this is someone that clearly does not understand that. When you go into a restaurant and you tip your server, you know, you look around. There's bussers, there's food runners, there's servers running the food. You know, there's hosts too. All these people are in the tip pool. Now, some restaurants don't include the host. I've never really worked in a restaurant that includes hosts, but there are some that do it. Usually most corporate restaurants don't do that. The mom and pop shops, they might have some kind of system going into place there. But for the most part, it's food runners or expos, servers, bussers. They all split the tips, okay? Now, what a lot of people don't understand is, like this fucking jackass Asmongold, that if you go into a restaurant and you ring up, we're going to say $100 bill, because this is pretty easy math here. $100 bill, that's going to be a 20% tip, is going to be $20. So the server is basically expecting $20 to cover their costs, because what the server's cost is they have to tip out on their sales to these other three parties. Two parties, the bussers and the expos, sometimes the host, but we're not counting that. So those other two parties need to get paid, and these are all based off the sales of the server. So if you have someone come in there and they, you know, ring up, you know, $100 tab, that, you know, and then that happens 10 times through the night. Now you're at $1,000 in sales. You know, you're expecting to make 200. Some of that money is going outbound because it has to be tipped out to someone else. Now, if you go in there and you ring up a $100 bill and you give your server $5, $10, you know, we're talking 5-10% tip. You know, you're basically, if he's lucky, depending on the tip out of the restaurant, he's just breaking even on that service. So you essentially stole that service that he gave you. Like, you know what I love to do? This is the Mike Trout card. I just love to come to my friend and say, hey, you know what? I know this thing's worth, you know what, $200. Here's $100. Never mind. Here's $5. Like, that's the same fucking thing. You know what I mean? People do it. And again, because of what we were talking about before, because that physical service doesn't exist in space-time continuum, there's no way to say to show what they took from me. Or you.
Yeah, let's be honest. They're always doing that. They're just looking for another way to look down on poor people. It's fucking annoying.
Is largely to
I
blame.
don't agree with that sentiment, but I just
During
think it's
COVID,
extremely
everyone was feeling
misguided.
generous, said Eric Plom, founder and CEO of San Francisco-based startup UpTip, which aims to facilitate cashless tipping. The problem is that it reached a new standard that we all couldn't really live with. He added, particularly when it comes to tipping prompts at a wide range of establishments, a trend also referred to as tip creep.
Tip creep.
I think that this problem is a joke. And I think that the fact that this problem is a factor is also a joke. I am so upset at the reality that I live in that people are upset because they're being asked to tip. It's very annoying to me because the implication is that they're afraid to say no. You are...
Okay, so I worked in a restaurant that it was kind of a fast casual restaurant, and it was basically a biscuit house. And if he's talking about what I think he's talking about, had this same issue, but I never heard anyone complain about it because, again, I think it's more of the systems that they create. It's all through these iPads and stuff like that. Like the cashiers at this restaurant, when, someone would run a credit card, when they sign it, it would offer to give them a tip. Now, I don't think the restaurant specifically designed that. I think that was more designed for the software. I could be wrong about that, but I just always thought that was weird that, a cashier for a biscuit house without a service staff there's a tip prompt. And this was 6 years ago when this was going on. And I noticed that seemed to have really kind of picked up during the pandemic. And this seems to be what he's reacting to. And this I kind of understand because when I started serving 20 years ago, this is when like these takeout areas within full service restaurants would start becoming available, more so, if not, And there was always kind of a thing up in the air, like, do I tip the takeout person? Like, what am I doing here? And every restaurant's different, I should say, and how their procedures are for takeout. But there really seem to be, like, no, you don't, because they're making a higher hourly wage than all the other servers are. And they're not really doing much, like they are taking orders, but they're not doing it in the same fashion that a server is, because they're picking up the phone saying, the restaurant, blah, 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 what would you like? We'll go through that whole process with them. I mean, they're not going to get drinks. They're not, in a full service sense. So that's essentially why you're not supposed to tip the takeout person. But that appears to have shifted over these last 6 years. And that seems to be what he's talking about and rallying against. And I kind of have an agreement there because, you should tip for service, specifically full service. I mean, if someone, drops off your food, yeah, you should tip for that too. But takeout seems to be a different beast because, again, it's not full service. Delivery is. Takeout, I mean, you're calling the restaurant, they're taking the order or bagging the food. I mean, I'm not really seeing why someone in takeout should be receiving tips, especially with a higher wage.
You're afraid of the disapproval of a bunch of random losers at a random restaurant that you will probably never see again, thinking that you're cheap. And you're willing to give away your money because of that. I'm sorry to say, but you don't deserve your fucking money. It's pathetic. Absolutely fucking pathetic.
Now, I'm reminded of, so I saw this pop up, and there's also this kind of viral post making the rounds on Twitter. This is, I don't know where this is from.
Yep.
Some restaurant owner, I saw it's somewhere in New York, which sounds about right. But some restaurant owner apparently posted this message, which says, directed at her customers, which says, we expect you to tip 20% minimum. That's the end of the story, period. The number is even printed right there on the check, so you don't have to.
Okay, this is a little egregious. Again, this is a private business. They can do what they want. But if you're so hell-bent on getting your servers their 20% tip, I mean, feel free to just pay that yourself or include it in their wage if it's that important to you. But it's not. They want to, publicly subsidize their employees.
Do any math. When you walk in the door, you enter into a covenant.
When I walk into the door, they enter into a covenant with me. I will steal the salt shaker and the silverware, and I will leave the store. That's the way it goes. That's why I get the to-go box. The things to go would be their stuff.
I assume he's joking here, but like if this is the case, like if he's really serious, I mean, that's a little trashy, bro. A little trashy.
Yeah, that
a millionaire
is
stealing salt and
that's
pepper
the
shakers.
expectation. I don't know why they can't.
There you go, bro.
It's not stealing. It's not stealing. It's a covenant. That's right. I used to do that all the time, by the way. Anytime there was mandatory gratuity, I'd steal the silverware. And anything else I could put in the
it's honestly okay to do that. Like, you're not fucking the server over, so I don't think they care. I mean, and not to mention, most of these corporations, like, you're not really, like, okay, this guy likes Warcraft and stuff like that. Like, you stealing the silverware is like, hitting him with 2 hit points when you're at level 60 in Warcraft or whatever. Like, you're not doing much. Like, literally, that stuff is just written off.
If you feel any kind of way about this other than 100% accepting, you should stay home. invest in your own sound system, get some nice glassware, install dimmers on your kitchen lights, put on some candles, and make your own cocktails. I won't say that you should go elsewhere because 20% is the minimum expected tip in bars and restaurants all over this city, and your feelings about the fact are irrelevant. And if you're uncomfortable with a woman having...
That's crazy because I feel the exact same way about them. I do. I feel the exact same way. They're upset about it. I'm going to go in there, and now I was going to tip. Now I'm not going to. Now I'm buying 3 drinks, and I'm not tipping on a single one. That's the way it goes.
I mean, I'm not anyone to tell someone to not stick it to a business owner, the man, whatever. But again, like your beef here is with the restaurant, and what you're kind of doing is, you know, it's not you in the restaurant. I mean, it is when you walk in because you're in their physical space, but like you're dealing with low-level employees, you know, people who are making tips in a low, well, it depends on the state you are, you know, like some states like Florida pay dog shit server wages. Some places like California, Illinois, New York, they do pay better. But, you know, again, that tip is where you're making all of your money as a server. And if, you know, again, I'm sure he's joking, but if this is what you do, if you go into restaurants to stick it to the restaurant, you're really just sticking it to the server if you're not tipping them, because the restaurant doesn't care if you don't tip them. You know, is this business owner making it easier or harder for their employees? I don't know. I guess that's for you to decide. Because, I mean, look at how this guy's reacting. But again, this is New York. It's just, it's a different beast out there when it comes to, I guess when it comes to serving, but I just mean like what he's advocating for is basically crapping on the server and, you know, thinking that you're crapping on the restaurant when in reality, you're just fucking over someone who's trying to fucking pay their rent.
How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
How did the 20% tip come from? They just made the number up.
No, that's been pretty standard for a while,
You can tell
bro.
the waiter and ask their boss why. Yep, there it is. Was he talking about lights and dimmers? The implication is like the aesthetic of the restaurant, right?
The atmosphere.
The agency to
You're
explain
paying for
any of
more
this
than
to you,
just food,
again,
people.
stay home. Go ahead and go buck wild in the comments if you feel the need. So
That's right.
this attitude, by the way, is part. We hear about the tip fatigue. This is part of the reason.
Well, this attitude to me isn't a problem. Because that person is an NPC to me. I hear that and I'm like, okay, well, there's plenty of annoying NPCs in games. Yeah, they're going to be obnoxious. You just buy it anyway. It's fine. They're talking to you. Just don't listen. Just don't look at them.
I mean, he's got a point. I understand what he's saying here. Like, trust me, business owners, managers, they are just straight up NPCs. They suck, you know, and they shouldn't be so condescending to people. Like, if you own a business, the last thing you want to do is put out a statement like that. You know, because this is the reaction you're going to get. And I agree with that. But the problem is don't that business owner who wrote out this statement isn't working on the floor. They're sitting in an office somewhere, just letting the shift run on automatic pilot. And then people like this come in and want to, you know, stir up the boat, or what is it, rock the boat. And then you're just bothering some poor person who's just trying to pay their fucking rent. It's fucking insane.
It's not a big deal.
No, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal.
Yeah, just go there anyway and just buy it. Just don't give them the tip. What are they going to do?
Nothing. Not pay the rent, apparently.
Hope that they spit in your drink. Hope they do that, because then you can sue them for tons of money.
There's no way you could prove that without cameras.
This totally entitled
That's a
attitude.
best case scenario.
You know, we've talked about tipping, you know, over the years, really, because it is such an important issue. And I will tell you that this is one issue. I have been radicalized on this. I have been. My own position on tipping has radically changed. I mean, I used to be, I used to be a big tipper. I used to be, you know, and there's times in the past you could probably find things that I've written or things that I've said years ago, just passionately defending the practice of tipping. And now
I tip anywhere I go out. I always, if I do Uber Eats, I give them the most amount of money. Because I've got so much money, it literally doesn't matter.
Then why are you complaining?
It makes no fucking difference to me.
What am I missing here?
But I don't think any less of people that don't do that. That's the difference. That's where it comes from. And I think that's what the actual problem is. Is it's people think that they, what do you call it? People think that they are doing a good thing, or that like it's mandatory to do what they do. It's about being forced to do it. Yeah, it's about the implication that you're forced to do it.
No. Okay. No. No. That no one's being forced to do anything. You know, like, again, you can go in a restaurant and not tip. Like, that's not what's kind of going on here. It's just, it seems to be, we're just focusing on the tips and not like how the causation, or not causation, but just the ripple effect of not tipping. Okay, because again, like, you're not sticking it to the restaurant, you're sticking it to the server at that point, and that's the person who's just trying to just get through life. You know, if you want to stick it to the restaurant, you don't go to the restaurant. Sticking it to the restaurant is not going into the restaurant and fucking the server over or stealing the silverware. Like, these things do not affect the restaurant whatsoever. That's not how it works. Like, if you want to stick it to the restaurant, don't go to the restaurant. If you want to stick it to the restaurant, go to their competitor. Stiffing the server is not sticking it to the restaurant. The restaurant uses you to pay their server. Have you not figured that out yet?
Why generalizing, though, and punishing those who are friendly and hardworking? It's not a punishment for people not to give you extra money for your job.
It's not extra money. It's not extra money. You're missing the point here. You live in Texas, bro. Go ask some of those servers what they make an hour. It's not a lot of money. And even when it is a lot of money, you know, we're not talking minimum wage at $14, $15 an hour. We're talking about half of that. So this seems to kind of just be misguided and just lost in just not understanding how this works.
Punishment, that's what's normal. Whenever you get your paycheck and your boss doesn't give you a bonus, that you're not being punished.
Tips aren't bonuses.
You're entitled as fuck, yes. If you don't,
that's part of the deal in going to a restaurant. Because, again, this is what he doesn't understand. Tipping isn't a bonus. Tipping is the restaurant using you, the customer, as a third party to basically fund their payroll. That's the secret nobody knows. Tipping is not a bonus. Tipping is the restaurant using the public as a third party to pay their payroll. It's really not that difficult when you think about it.
Tips as a waiter, get another job.
Now, this I agree with. Now, this is what I'm a big proponent of this. If you don't like the situation that you're in and you end up getting tipped or not tipped by a dickhead like this, yeah, get another job. This is not the Republic of China. You were not forced to work in a restaurant for your whole life. So the bitching about it is not going to do anything. If you don't like the situation you're in, I got good news for you. Every restaurant is a restaurant, but it's also very different. There's different demographics. There's different menus. There's different price points, different managers, different owners, different companies. You can move around and find the restaurant that works best for you. He is definitely right about that. You know, for people that dig their feet into the ground, down to their knees, and say, this is me, I'm standing here, and I demand better pay and tips. I mean, good luck with all that, sir.
That's it. Just get another job. Problem solved.
Well, not really, but
now
the
I find
sentiment is
myself
there.
way on the other end of it, where I don't want to tip anyone anymore. And
It's not that simple. Here's the crazy thing. It actually is. To me, it is.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, because what, you make $1 million, you're a streamer, you've never worked in a restaurant, of course it's going to seem easy to you. What is it? What did they say? It's easier to say than do, or whatever. You know, anyone can talk, but can you walk the walk?
It's crazy. So you're getting emotionally attached to this and upset
No one's
about
emotionally
this
attached.
and whatever. Never had a
You
job.
don't
Oh, you're going
understand
to
what
get
this
mad
is
about
about,
this. Oh,
or
you're
what
wrong.
it is. You've never worked in a restaurant.
What
so
does any of that have to do with me?
that you never worked in a restaurant? You're kind of speaking from ignorance.
I'm struggling to see how this has anything to do with about my life or my money.
Well, hold on. No one's saying this is about you. You're making it about you. This is about people and tip culture, and that your attitudes towards tipping has effects on people who are just trying to pay their fucking rent. You know, I'm going to guess you don't pay rent because you probably own that house you're sitting in. So right there's a point of oblivion, whatever, that this guy, that Asmongold is clearly showing.
Selfish? So let me get this straight. I'm selfish because I'm not giving you my money?
No, that's not what's being discussed here. If you're not tipping a server, if you go to a restaurant, if you know, he already said, "Oh, Uber Eats, I give them my money." Sure, okay, let's keep this to DoorDash, Uber Eats, restaurant, because there's a full service component to that. If you ask for someone to provide you with a service in a full service restaurant, delivering pizza, whatever it may be, because there is a service being provided, even as an Uber driver. You know, someone's using their car, going to you. You know, ideally, you'd hope they're being nice to you and all that stuff. The same thing with serving, because you have to be nice to people, especially if you're going to ask for a tip, to ensure proper service. That's what tip stands for, to ensure proper service. That PS part's very, very important, proper service, because what did we say? There's no physical representation of physical service. And if you go in a restaurant and you get good service and then you're like this dickhead and you don't pay for it, it's not about you being selfish. It's about you stealing time and money from people. It's really not that hard. Oops, I screwed that up. Hold on, let's go up.
I think somebody's being selfish, but I don't know if it's me.
It is you, sir. Because I don't think you even understand what you're talking about at this point.
What does it matter? Like, oh, it's hard for me to get jobs. Why is who cares? Like, what what are you talking about? Why would anybody care about this?
And I used to be 20% at a minimum.
It's crazy how entitled people are. It's unbelievable.
It's not about entitlement. It's
Why
about
would
paying your
anybody
rent.
give a shit?
And now I find myself way on the other end of it, where I don't want to tip anyone anymore. And I used to be 20% at a minimum. That's your baseline. And you'd have to try really hard to get less than 20%. So if you like C- service, this is how I used to operate. C- service is 20%. And if you get up into B or A+, now I'm going 30. I might.
Okay, so I want to dispel this myth. There's a lot of people that say this. Okay, and you know, C- service, like, this is kind of where serving's really hard, or we were talking about proper service is hard because it's extremely subjective. You cannot quantify good service. You know, it's like the Supreme Court labeled porn. You know, I don't know what it is, but I know what it is when I see it. The proper service seems to kind of fall in that same category, but it's extremely subjective. So what he might find C- service, someone else might find as F service. I mean, you can see what I'm building towards here. There's no reason to draw this out. But the problem with it is it's extremely subjective. And again, there's no way to quantify good service. And this is why this is a bit of a wonky category to talk about. Yeah, that's all I got. Let's go on.
Tip 35, 40%. Very generous tip. Now that's not how I look at it anymore. And 20%, it's like that's almost a maximum. Now your baseline is 0, and you got to earn the tip. And I talk to a lot of people that feel the same.
You know, that reminds me of a Third Rock from the Sun episode where John Lithgow is, I think, out at a restaurant, and I think what he does is he tells the server, I'm going to start with like $20, and every time you screw up, I'm going to take $1 out of it. And it was kind of interesting because it kind of shows what we're talking about here is every time the server would just do something minuscule wrong, you make a point to remove $1. All right, let's get back to the video.
Same way about it. And it's not our fault. You pressed it way too much. In the customer service industry, everyone wants a tip now, everywhere you go. Even places where they're not doing any.
I think the problem is the entitlement for it. I think that's what.
No, I mean, I don't think there's entitlement when it comes to tips because the people who are working hourly wages aren't setting up these software, they're not setting this up. You know, again, if you work in a restaurant, you understand that. You literally come to work, they tell you, do this, do that, do that. This is the computer, go for it. It's not like they're sitting there being like, can you set me up a tip screen, please? I want to make extra money. That's not how it works. If that tip screen is there, it was there before. It was just there with the software. You know, if the restaurant can remove it if they want to, but they don't because they want to pay their employees through a third party known as the public sector.
really rubs a lot of people the wrong way. It's that people feel entitled to being tipped because they're doing something. And like there's like this this like righteous indignation that these people have for like, oh, you're not tipping us extra money. That's understandable. Well, I understand it, but that doesn't mean I have to care. Like, I of course I understand how they feel. Of course they want more money. Everybody wants more money. But why would I care?
Anything
Mhm.
like you go to a coffee shop
Yeah.
and you ask for coffee and they just pour the coffee into the cup and hand it to you.
Right. This is the takeout argument we were making earlier in this episode or in this show, is that when you get takeout at a restaurant, if you go to Starbucks or you're working in that biscuit house like I was, and you have people working the register and it's asking them for a tip. Yeah, that's not our tipping culture. That is not what we do here in America. That has never been a thing. And it seems to be more of a thing because of the software that's been developed over the last 6-7 years. Because prior to that, when before iPad screens and these kind of registers existed, this kind of software didn't exist that would prompt tips. It just didn't. And so I think this is more of a cause of the kind of software and hardware restaurants are using, and maybe a way to kind of find a way to pay their employees more through the public sector. And again, these two guys, it doesn't seem like they really understand that,
I could do that. And there are plenty other, you could just do self-service and I could do that. There's nothing about your performance of that job
Correct.
that I feel I need to especially reward. You're already rewarded.
I actually don't agree with this argumentation because the implication is that there is performance that deserves to be specially rewarded based off of what the performance is and the nature of it, this specific thing.
Right. This is what we talked about already. Full service versus, non-full service, or, takeout in a full service restaurant. Like, there's a full service experience. And it seems to be what he's alluding to, and that I'm alluding to as well. Like, that's the part of culture, of tipping culture, that deserves to be tipped because of the full service sense to it. It's like gas pump. I mean, I never was around for full service gas stations. I mean, I think they were around when I was like a little kid, but they were very, very, very rarely used because it was more expensive. A guy would come out, the gas is more expensive. You'd have to tip the person. Like, there's a reason full service gas stations don't really exist anymore. And plus, they're just not necessary, but that's a whole nother podcast.
I disagree with that because the implication there is that some people deserve tips and other people don't. I think
Agreed.
that the fundamental problem is that if you want $30 for something, don't charge $20 for it and expect for me to give you an extra $10. Charge $30. That's the actual issue. And it doesn't matter about if they do a good job or a bad job. That's irrelevant. If you want people to give you this much money, then charge that price. Don't go charge two different prices and then get mad when people don't fulfill your unspoken rule.
Well, again, I don't know a lot of people that get mad about it. I'm sure there's some frustrations in it. And I would honestly assume anyone that's getting mad about not being tipped on the $9 biscuit that they didn't put together, or coffee or whatever, I think that's more of an age thing. Because who are the people that work in these types of places? They're usually that younger 20s, high school, that age group that is, because this mentality he's talking about is extremely immature. And don't get me wrong, there are people who are on the older side of that age group who do act that way. We're not trying to say that doesn't exist, but the majority of it comes from that immature mindset. And I know that was really prevalent because I remember being in my early 20s when I was in the service industry and being around people of that same age. Even as I got older, you would see that mindset, especially as you were growing out of it.
Your covenant, That's how EU does it. Everything is more expensive. Yeah, that's fine.
With your paycheck. And
yeah, but that's the EU. Don't get me started on those fucking bastards.
Whatever you get paid, it may not be a whole lot, but it's probably basically what that is worth.
All right, so that's basically the end of the video then. So it's very fascinating to see how that video went, because again, the tipping culture is definitely out of control when it comes to non-full service tipped or non-service non-full. I could say it, I promise. Non-full service employees. If you're a takeout, barista, any of these kind of non-full service experiences, there's nothing wrong with offering that option to tip, but getting mad about it seems to be a little ridiculous. And that I do agree with. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Ready Said Podcast. I don't really have a snarky ending for this one. It's just, hey, Don't be a cheap bastard. You know, if you're going to go to a restaurant, a full-service restaurant, please tip your server if they do a great job. Don't steal the service from them. And if you can't afford to pay 20%, there's nothing wrong with paying what you can. Just don't be a fucking asshole and try to make this person's life a little bit easier if you can. Because remember, they're just like you. They're just trying to fucking pay their rent and get through this life, just like you are.